Nissan Micra 1.2 Dig-S Connect Edition Engine Code HR12, 1198cc, 3-SIL Model 2014 Petrol. The error code P0014 on this car belongs to the variable valve timing system of the exhaust camshaft and usually indicates a problem in the control or feedback from the exhaust actuator or a problem in the oil pressure and oil supply to that system. And because the exhaust actuator has already been replaced, and the chain seems to be good for the time being based on the measurement, it is wise to systematically check the entire system around variable valve timing and lubrication, instead of replacing parts again at random. This is a petrol engine with 3 cylinders with the internal designation HR12, with a capacity of approximately 1.2 liters. This engine type came into production around the beginning of 2010 and was used in various variants in models in the compact segment until roughly around 2023, after which newer engine families were gradually used more, and during this period, various well-known points have emerged on the internet and in practical workshops, such as possible chain elongation due to poor or late maintenance, problems with the variable valve, timing actuators, and sensitive magnets, oil pressure channels, and in some cases, issues with carbon deposits and contamination during many short journeys. Known general problems with this car and engine that appear on the internet and in the experiences of mechanics include reports of engine management lights with codes around the variable valve timing, such as P00, a 4 and P00, a 6 sometimes in combination with light knocking or irregular running in the cold phase, reports of chain noise during cold start or during acceleration, which may indicate the beginning of chain stretch if the oil has not been used according to schedule or with the wrong specification. In addition, general issues such as clutch wear during heavy city use whereof shock absorbers occur, and plastic suspension parts at higher mileage, and in some cars electronic malfunctions in comfort systems. A structured diagnosis and repair plan for the error code P0014 for this engine looks approximately as follows. First, extensive diagnosis with a brand-specific diagnostic tester, so that in addition to reading error codes, live data from both actuators, camshaft positions, oil pressure and temperatures can be viewed while idling and during a test drive. Plot the exhaust actuator and inlet actuator graphically and check whether the requested position and actual position correspond, and at which point the exhaust actuator falls back to 0%. Then control check the basic conditions, namely oil level, oil quality, and maintenance history. If the oil is dark, heavily thickened, or clearly outdated, or if you are not sure when the last change took place, first replace the oil and oil filter with exactly the prescribed oil specification, and test again after this service, because contaminated oil can seriously disrupt the accurate operation of the variable valve timing. Then check the electrical part, namely the wiring and plugs of the exhaust actuator and the controlling magnet and the camshaft sensor. Visually inspect for damage, corrosion, and loose contacts. Then use a multimeter or an oscilloscope to measure the power supply mass and control signals to rule out the possibility that there is an interruption, high transition resistance, or interfering resistance in the circuit. It is also useful to compare the camshaft and crankshaft sensor signals with each other via the oscilloscope to ensure that the timing is actually stable despite having previously put the chain on. A measurement seemed correct because sometimes a slight stretch is just within tolerance, but in combination with contamination and delay in the actuator, sufficient to cause errors. If the electrical side and oil status are okay and the error returns, the mechanical part of the variable valve timing must be further examined, which includes checking the oil pressure with a mechanical oil pressure gauge to rule out the possibility that there is a general or partial systematic pressure drop. Checking the finer oil pressure channels to the exhaust actuator for possible blockage by sludge, metal particles, or paint deposits. In some cases, it is necessary to remove the valve timing adjuster on the camshaft itself and inspect it for internal wear or contamination, even if the electromagnetic actuator has already been replaced, It can also be considered to clean the oil system with a suitable flush, but only under the supervision of an experienced technician and with the right resources, because aggressive agents can damage an already worn engine. At a minimum, diagnostic equipment and tools are required. A good brand-specific diagnostic tester, an oscilloscope for crankshaft and camshaft signals, a multimeter, a mechanical oil pressure gauge, standard engine tools and tools for dismantling the valve cover and camshaft adjusters, and possibly special blocking tools for the chain, and timing for deeper inspection or replacement. The fact that the error returned after 2 weeks after replacing the exhaust actuator often points to an underlying cause such as oil and contamination or wiring, and not just the actuator itself. In terms of years of manufacture and models, the model you are talking about was delivered in this form approximately from the beginning of 2010 to approximately the end of 2017, after which a subsequent generation came onto the market with other engines and platforms. In addition, the HR12 engine family was also used in other small models within the group and in some markets with other type designations. When choosing between petrol and diesel in this segment, for many private drivers with predominantly short journeys, the petrol variant is often more sensible because modern small diesels with particulate filters and extensive aftertreatment are much more sensitive. For disruptions in city traffic and maintenance can be more expensive. Maintenance costs for this type of car in euros for a minor service are usually in the order of approximately 200 to 300 euros, including oil, oil filter, basic check and labor costs, depending on the hourly rate of the workshop, which is often between 60 and approximately 100 euros per hour. A major service in which air filter, cabin filter, spark plugs and fuel filter can also be replaced plus additional checks is more likely to be between approximately 350 to 600 euros, and when larger items are added such as brake discs, brake pads, or the replacement of the timing chain if necessary, this can increase to more than 1,000 euros. Average maintenance per 10,000 kilometers to approximately 200,000 kilometers means that every 10 to 15,000 kilometers, or at least once a year, a minor service is carried out with oil and filter, and checks approximately every 30 to 40,000 kilometers, a larger service with air filter spark plugs, and possibly fuel filter, and every 2 years changing the brake fluid after approximately 60 to 120,000 kilometers, it is often necessary to renew brake pads and sometimes brake discs, depending on driving style and circumstances. Tires often last between 30,000 and 60,000 kilometers under normal driving style shock, absorbers somewhere between 80,000 and 150,000 kilometers. Starter motor and alternator can sometimes last well over 100,000 kilometers without any problems, but can break down sooner in the event of a breakdown. Parts costs for wearing parts in euros are roughly between 50 and 100 euros for a set of spark plugs, for an air filter between 20 and 50 euros, for an oil filter, a few tens of euros, for brake pads per axle, approximately 100 to 150 euros, and for brake discs plus blocks per axle, between 200 and 400 euros. A set of 4 shock absorbers including installation can be between 400 and 1,000 euros, depending on brand quality and hourly wages. Replacing a starter motor often costs between 150 and 300 euros plus in terms of parts. 1 to 3 hours of labor, and a dynamo costs between 200 and 400 euros plus comparable labor in terms of parts. For every 10,000 kilometers, if maintenance is carried out properly, you should roughly count on an average budget of approximately 200 to 300 euros for regular matters spread over oil filters and incidental replacements. When you extend this to 200,000 kilometers, this means a total of several thousand euros in maintenance, excluding major unexpected repairs, such as a chain set clutch or variable valve timing parts when they fail prematurely. And with calm and careful use, this is often lower than with hard driving and deferred maintenance. Problems that are known in the construction years from the beginning of production until around 2026 with this type and comparable engines are as mentioned. Variable valve timing failures, chain issues, sometimes ignition coil or spark plug issues in petrol vehicles, and in diesel variants in other models, particulate filter and EGR problems in purchasing choices. It is often recommended to choose the well-maintained petrol variants with a demonstrable maintenance history, and to consider diesels especially if you make many long journeys well over 30,000 kilometers annually, because then the advantage of lower fuel costs will be better realized. Straight, and the chance of particulate filter problems is smaller. When inspecting a used car of this type, it is wise to have the car read for error codes beforehand or during a test drive, to pay attention to any ticking or rattling noise during a cold start, which may indicate a chain, to pay attention to the smooth pickup of power without stuttering or gaps in acceleration, and to look at oil consumption and leaks. It is also useful to check the maintenance booklet or digital history for regular oil and filter changes and timely spark plug replacement. In the case of suspicious cars with little or no history, it is wise to leave it alone and continue looking for one with demonstrably better maintenance. How to prevent these problems in the future is essentially by being strict about maintenance, not skimping on oil and filters, only using oil that meets the factory specification, never driving with an oil level that is too low, regularly making longer journeys so that the engine is properly warmed up, and having a diagnosis made immediately at the first reports of an engine management light or irregular running, and not driving for weeks with a light on. Because that can cause relatively minor problems, such as a dirty channel or incipient actuator complaint, to develop into expensive damage to chain camshaft systems. And catalyst. The hourly rate of garages for a brand-independent company is often around 60 to about 80 euros per hour, and a brand dealer is often between 80 and more than 100 euros per hour, depending on country and region. And this explains why the same repair at different companies has different total prices. When you compare the costs of your own car and other models, it makes sense to look not only at part prices, but also at the hourly wage and the complexity of the repair, because engines with many electronics and complicated timing systems require more diagnosis time than simple older engines. If you look beyond just your current car, you can read on the internet and in practical experiences that many modern small turbo petrol engines and small diesels are sensitive to maintenance delays and the wrong oil. Therefore, models with simpler engines are sometimes more reliable in the long term, although they consume slightly more fuel. For people who are mainly looking for reliability and low maintenance costs, it is wise to choose a model for which the engine is known to be not extremely complex, and for which many experiences are available that indicate few major engine problems at high mileage, and a purchase inspection with diagnosis is always required. And test drive is a good investment to prevent problems in the future as much as possible. P0014 exhaust camshaft position, CMP. Right, rear bank 1, timeout, system performance. What does the P0014 code mean? How to troubleshoot P0014 code. What are the most common causes of code P0014? What does the P0014 code mean? In most cases, the appearance of P0014 is due to lack of oil lubrication. The best way to remedy this situation is to pour engine cleaner and flush the engine before reinstalling the new VVT solenoid. If this is not done, failure of the new VVT solenoid will occur in the near future. It is very important to note that in new VVT engines, they are very susceptible to lower quality oils. You need to buy high-quality branded oils to have a more durable oil timing system. Bank 1 or Bank A VVT or VCT solenoid failure. Different manufacturers use these terms, but both systems are the same. VVT, variable valve timing. VCT, variable camshaft timing. There is usually an error with the intake camshaft solenoid. It is not manufacturer-specific, it is a generic code. Bank A or Bank 1 in the case of a 4-cylinder engine. Depending on the engine type, if you have 2 banks, Bank 2 error will occur. How to troubleshoot P0014 code. use a multimeter and measure the resistance of the valve coil. Basically, every valve must be checked for solenoid failure. If you don't see 712 ohms on your multimeter, it's most likely not working. Pin test means you need to check the wiring harness continuity between the valve wiring harness pins and the brain, aka the ECM computer. Check all engine grounds. If the intake valve and exhaust solenoid valve will have the same type of connection and are interchangeable, try swapping one electromagnet for another. If, after clearing all current codes, a different code comes back, you have essentially located the fault and saved hours of diagnostic work. A VVC, or VCT solenoid failure, is usually caused by oil clogging the screen filter. What are the most common causes of code P0014? Why did the solenoid fail? This is usually due to an oil maintenance problem. Poor choice of oil product for this particular engine causes carbon to build up in VCT engines and cause a small bottleneck to develop. P0014. P0014B. Camshaft position, timing over advanced or system performance, Bank 1. OBDI DTC trouble code description. B. Camshaft position, timing over advanced or system performance, Bank 1. What does that mean? This diagnostic trouble code, DTC, is a generic powertrain code, which means that it applies to OBDI-equipped vehicles, including but not limited to Toyota, VW, Honda, Chevrolet, Hyundai, Audi, Acura, etc. A P0014 code refers to the VVT, variable valve timing, or VCT, variable camshaft timing, components and the car's PCM, powertrain control module, or ECM, engine control module. VVT is a technology used in the engine to allow it to get greater power or efficiency at different running points. That consists of a few different components, but the P0014 DTC specifically refers to the camshaft, cam timing. In this case, if the cam timing is above a set limit over advanced, the engine light will be illuminated and the code will be set. Bank 1 is the side of the engine containing cylinder 1. The B camshaft shall be either the exhaust, right, or rear camshaft. Left, right, and front rear are determined as if viewed from the driver's seating position. Potential symptoms: most likely a P0014 DTC will result in one of the following: hard starting, poor idle, and or stalling. There are potentially other symptoms as well. Of course, when trouble codes are set, the MIL malfunction indicator lamp, aka the check engine light, illuminates. Causes: a P0014 DTC trouble code may be caused by one or more of the following: incorrect camshaft timing wiring problems, harness wiring, in intake timing control valve control solenoid system, continuous oil flow to VCT piston chamber failed timing valve control solenoid. Stuck open. Possible solutions: this DTC code is a result of a mechanical fault of the VCT unit or related components, so there is no need for electrical diagnosis. Refer to vehicle-specific repair manual to perform component tests for the VCT unit. Notes: dealer techs have advanced tools and the ability to follow detailed troubleshooting steps, including the ability to test components using a scan tool.